From Long John's wild love for gambling burning a $55 million hole in his pocket, to a long list of fines due to suspensions and citations. And I wouldn't be great at my job if I didn't start off with John's gambling addiction, which has cost him a massive $55 million. Now, everyone who follows Long John knows that the man loves his gambling, but it hasn't been very kind to him over the years. Daly claims that he's lost an average of $2.4 million a year from 1991 to 2007. How does that even happen? Well, it turns out Daly would play simultaneous hands of blackjack of 5 to 15 grand per hand. And considering how big the number is, you'd think that Long John would have a little regret. But John's attitude is as unique as his style, because he claims he has no regrets and has lots of fun doing it, even if he lost millions. But he claims that he's finally moved on. Such a shame it took him this long. I guess we all know that nobody just gambles. There's often alcohol and other stuff involved too. This brings us to the next controversy. Long John has had lifelong problems with drinking and substance abuse. Now you should know that he's not only an addict, but also a hypocrite. John caused a great deal of upset after he accused pro golfers of using cocaine.
It's funny, we get done, and after you get done, we got our butts beat. But I was playing with Phil, and Hank and Tiger beat me again.
While bragging that he was a clean-living guy. And as much as I'd like to believe that, it's just not true. John's alcohol problems were in the spotlight for years, even though he had claimed that he was in full control of his drinking habits. This image became harder to maintain when he was arrested for being drunk in public. And as much as the two-time major winners fans were disappointed in him, they still had nothing on John's swing coach, Butch Harmon. The coach was so mad at him that he actually quit his job after John's arrest. And his main reason was that his only goal for Long John was to show him that golf is the most important thing in his life. But instead, he proved that he would rather get drunk than play golf. And trust me, I'd never go so hard on him if it was only off the course. But John literally drinks in between games. Like his classy performance in the Pods Championship 2008, when during a rain delay, he spent all his time drinking beer and mingling in a Hooters corporate tent.
He used to smoke Marlboro Lights, and he said, just start smoking. Here, have a cigarette.
And
whatever you got to do to keep the weight off.
Isn't that the most amazing thing you've ever heard?
John then went out and shot a 77, which is totally a rookie score. But what's even more furious is that the next day, instead of practicing, or heck, even going home to mope over his loss, he went back to the same Hooters tent and got drunk again. And it's not just his performance that was being affected. His drinking habits burnt a huge hole in his pocket. We're talking a $1.7 million gambling debt due to alcohol abuse. Like I said, even though drinking and gambling go hand in hand, doesn't mean that they should. And especially not for Long John. These two addictions, when combined together, made him go through the hardest phase of his life in 1997. Here's the backstory. Daly was hoping to deliver another banger of a performance in the '97 Players' Championship in Florida, but luck just wasn't on his side that day. Daly hit a bad round. And disappointed by his performance, he headed back to his hotel room. And what do you know? He was back to his bottle of alcohol for consolation. But this time, it got too much for him. He was later found unconscious in his room. After being taken to the hospital, John was diagnosed with alcohol poisoning. While many people were sharing their sympathies with the fallen pro, the PGA was definitely not in the mood to cut him some slack. He was temporarily banned from the PGA Tour, and the only way he could come back was through rehab. Now that's a pretty good outcome, that Daly had to work on his addiction. But you've got to understand that when you're a hot favorite for sponsors, there's no room for mistakes. Especially not controversial mistakes like these. Wilson Sporting Goods were the first to distance itself from Long John. Without Wilson, Daly was left with almost $2 million in debt and hundreds of thousands owing to tax. And while he was easily able to pay that off, the fact remains that alcohol has cost the man a lot, including his marriage. Let's be honest, an alcoholic isn't a great family man, and Long John has proved that by failing 4 marriages. Now, although he has been associated with many women, he made it official with only these 4. He married Dale Crafton in 1987, who is not only a model, but also hailed from a big-shot Arkansas family. Long John divorced her only 3 years later. Just a few months after his first divorce, he met Betty Fulford and married her in early 1992. It's worth mentioning that his alcohol problems were now at their peak, since it was the first time that he'd gone under rehab. Lots of people think that his drinking habits were the reason for his marriage problems.
Yeah.
Because
It's not about the number. At a certain point in a golf tournament,
You know, they can talk all they want about the 16 at Bay Hill. But
Because unfortunately, he was charged with third-degree assault after throwing Betty into a wall. Luckily for John, his wife didn't want to pursue the matter, and the charges were dropped. He went through his second divorce in '95. In the same year, he married his third wife, Paulette Dean. Although this time there was no drama like before, it still ended after 4 years in '99. Daly then remained a bachelor for 2 years, which was a big achievement for him. In 2001, he married Sherry Miller, and everyone thought that this marriage was definitely gonna stick. It all ended one night in 2007 after the two got into a fight in a restaurant. Sherry reportedly tried to stab John with a steak knife, for which she served 6 months in jail too. And obviously Daly divorced her after that. So after all of this, I think you won't be surprised to know that his history of misconduct isn't just limited to his home. His tantrums on the golf course have hurt his reputation too. And by tantrums, of course, I mean the one rare meltdown that's just resurfaced on social media. It's a video from the 2015 PGA Championship, where instead of using his powerful swing on the ball, John is seen flinging his club into Lake Michigan instead, in front of the whole audience. And if you watched that game, you'd probably have seen it coming. He had already hit all 3 of his tee shots into the lake too. And by the time his 4th shot reached dry land, John was fuming and flung his iron as far into the water as he could. But this wasn't even the first time that he'd done this. Daly just has a personal grudge with his golf clubs, almost as if he blames the iron for missing the shot. Because even in the 1998 Bay Hill Invitational and then again in the 2000 US Open, John flung his clubs into the water hazards, and the man seems to have no regrets over losing his cool. While many people have called his club throwing tantrums immoral, he says it just shows that he cares about the game. But fans seem to have totally different takes on the golf legend, saying that he's got so much talent and yet so little discipline. And if there's one thing that everyone agrees on, it's that Daly isn't a great role model. He's been suspended 5 times and has been fined over $100,000 in total. His first suspension came in 1993. While playing at the Kapalua International Open, he walked off in the middle of the round. And earlier that year, in the Kemper Open, he threw a scorecard at the scoring tent while being upset at scoring a 77. And then again, in the Southern Open, he walked off the course without telling his partners, and his suspension was the result of all 3 incidents. These antics have been going since the start of his career. Daly's received 7 PGA Tour orders to go to rehab, has even been cited 11 times for conduct unbecoming of a professional, and has been cited 21 times for failing to give his best efforts. So, from John's wild love for gambling burning a $55 million hole in his pocket, to a long list of fines due to suspensions and citations, these were John Daly's most controversial moments.